Namaste. Welcome to today's session of Global Festival of Oneness organized by Advaita Academy. Before we start today's session, I'd like to say a prayer. Sada Shiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Good evening, viewers. Today we are very pleased to welcome Janani Cleary as a speaker. Janani ji will be speaking to us about a very important topic, inclusiveness in Shankara'charys Advaita Vedanta. Before going to the talk, I'd like to share a few words about Janani ji. Janani ji has been a practitioner of yoga since the 70s, and then she took up her Vedanta learning under the Mahan Acharyas Chinmaya ji and Swami Dayananda Saraswati. She is now teaching Advaita Vedanta and yoga in the US. Welcome, Janani ji, and over to you for this session.
Namaste, and thank you for your welcome and also for this opportunity to present this topic. It is a topic which has, in its inclusiveness, is expansive, which is an interesting irony, which we'll see in just a minute. I would also like to open with a chant that helps to focus and hopefully promotes understanding in terms of what is being presented. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Tamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So, exclusiveness in Shankara'charys Advaita Vedanta is a long topic, and it's actually a loaded topic also. But in its description, once again, it is complete because you start with the word inclusiveness, and inclusiveness itself has so much behind it. So this is how we will proceed. We will look at the words actually in the title, understand what they are and how they are all connected, and see how ultimately it relates to us immediately and directly, as well as how does it work in terms of our everyday life. So with that, when you talk about inclusiveness, of course means including everything. So including, wanting to be included is a natural expression of every human being. We all have this need, if you will, to be included, to be accepted, to be at home with ourselves, in company with others. So in that, there's that expression of solitude is a wonderful thing, but it lacks one thing. And that is the end of it is it lacks company. So we all like the solitude. We all like, alone time, if you will. But ultimately, too, we want to have an acceptance and be surrounded by those that we feel connected to in whatever way we do. And in a social context, of course, the connectedness is sought through cultures, through ethnicities, through spiritual practices, through sports. Anything and everything becomes a mechanism for having a sense of inclusiveness. And people search or relate to various groups depending upon their own resonance in terms of what that group represents. So this is the natural human longing or seeking, if you will. And, it being the case, we recognize too that all of these groups, being what they are, provide the support and give people what it is that they need. And as well, if people find that something is not working for them, what do? They leave one group and go to another, seeking the same thing. So the underlying effort and expression in terms of any grouping is always to have a sense of belonging, to be included, and to feel at home with oneself in the midst of it all. And so it stands to reason then that if somebody is really, really keen on that, then what they're going to do is they're going to start looking at the very pursuit itself. For most people, it doesn't go that far. For most people, it's just moving from one group to another and striving to somehow or other find, their tribe, so to speak. They need to be with their tribe. And this is how people live their lives. And in the midst of all of that too, there is sort of an overarching recognition that, in as much as we have all these different groups, we also seek to have unity. So, especially if we have groupings that are natural, we have no control over them, i.e. ethnicity and culture. So these are groups that are sort of inherent with a person when they are born. And so with respect to that, they get to be who they get to be, and everybody gets to be who they get to be. And at the same time, in the process of being who they are, they don't necessarily want to, they don't want to create dissonance with other groups. Some people do, actually. That's a different story. But generally speaking, in order to be able to do what they want to do, everybody else should not interfere, and likewise for everyone else. So therefore, there is an overarching viewpoint and understanding that even though there is diversity, there is unity. So striving for unity in diversity is another way of expressing the same thing, the inclusiveness, wanting the inclusiveness. And at the same time, inclusiveness, but only to the extent that I don't become somehow or other alienated from what is my fundamental sense and grouping of where I belong. So this is all, the finer aspects of the social transactional setup for inclusiveness. And, there is it being the nature of things, this becomes then the real intent in the way anybody lives their lives. So then what happens next? Well, if there is somebody who really thinks about it and realizes that no matter which grouping I go to or what I do in relation to that grouping, I still feel like I'm not connected, that there's a disconnect somewhere. And that, especially if you bounce around a lot, you go from one group to another looking for it. And yet, you keep finding that somehow or other it works to a certain extent, but in other ways it doesn't work. And then you try to adjust it and make it work in other ways. And sometimes that can work for a while. But then a person who's really looking at it recognizes that, well, there must be something where there is a total inclusion. And in that total inclusion, nothing is left out, left over, or left behind. And so what is that thing? Or what is that pursuit? What is that focus? So a person who seeks, really seeks, and these people are few and far between, because most people just spend their lives moving about from one to the other, then that person is somebody who has, if they have the grace and the awareness, the intent, the keenness, if you will, begins to really inquire, discerning first, and then beginning to inquire, well, where is it? What is it? And how do I get it? That person is a person who turns their attention more towards what is Advaita. So Advaita is by its definition, means that which is one without a second. As it says in part of a verse in Chandogya relating to the nature of existence, ekameva advitiyam. So ekameva advitiyam, it is that in which there is only one and there isn't anything else afterwards. So the one in which there is nothing else afterwards, all that there is, if that's all that there is, it must necessarily then mean inclusion, because inclusiveness means being connected. Connected means no sense of separation, unity, and thereafter oneness. So therefore, really speaking, that inclusiveness that is being sought in other areas, other arenas, is really what is covered in Advaita. So the recognition or looking and trying to understand what is Advaita. If that is there, That's the other thing. You know, by the fact that it says Advaita Vedanta, that tells you, oh, it is there. There is something that can do this. There is something available. Because if it's not available, then there's no necessity to even try to pursue it because it's not there. So here, what we want is something which is there and says it's there. And the question, of course, is how is it there? And the bigger question is, and the one that we really care about, because if it's not working for us, what's the point in pursuing it in the first place? And that is, how will it benefit me? What will I get out of it? How will it show that what I am seeking this is somehow the solution? So just by the statement Advaita, it tells you right out of the gate that this is something which is all about oneness. Oneness means unity. Unity means inclusiveness. It's all there. So if that's the case, then the question then comes, okay, then where or how or what gets me to see that? So that's the next piece of it. And this is, again, in a way, it's a highly refined search, if you will. And it's in a way, too, something that we don't necessarily go in like this, really fine-tuning and looking, at least, and I can speak for myself, I didn't. I just kind of stumbled on it. And I consider that to be a blessing and a grace that I did. But it's this thing of the fact that it's available, the fact that you somehow come to discover that it's possible, and that you pay attention to it when you do, because that's the other piece. If you're not paying attention, it'll just go right by you, because things like that happen all the time. So you are blessed, I would consider, if you happen to be paying attention and you see that this can deliver what is being sought in terms of this idea of inclusiveness, oneness, and so on. But of course, the proof is in the pudding. So how does that happen? What do you do? How does it work? And this is where the word Vedanta tells us. And it's the topic, of course, the subject matter. It's not just a word, it's what it is. The whole teaching represents the whole vision of what oneness is. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with the fact that it's Vedanta. It comes from two words, Veda plus Anta. Literally speaking, we know that the Vedas are the text because of which the whole Vedic tradition, Hindu tradition, the whole culture is built upon what is contained in the Vedas. And the first section being a focus on how things should be done and or recognizing what to do to gain certain ends, along with a whole host of other things. It's relating to what we call the transactional world. So it tells you how to live your life, transactionally speaking. And in the process, it molds the person towards looking past all of it. It's just an amazing and beautiful thing in how it is presented and how it unfolds. And yet at the same time, there are always people in any tradition who start to look beyond what is the doing, that is, what can I do beyond what is being advocated, because I want something which is lasting. So the Vedas are all about doing and living a dharmic life, and at the same time, steering a person's mind in a different direction. And that direction is looking past all of this transactional stuff. So recognizing that no matter how much you do, there will always be something more to be done, that finite in any finite pursuit will never, no matter how many finites you have, they will never equal infinite. And if what you want is infinite, then you want to go in for something else, because finite plus finite can never equal infinite. And therefore, where do I get that infinite? And again, how does it relate to me? What does it do for me? And so here, the Anta, the end. So at the end of the Vedas are the Upanishads. The Upanishads are all these texts that speak to exactly that. For somebody who has not dropped out of the society, but grown out of it, that finds himself in the middle of being successful, accomplished, and still finding that something is missing. This is more or less characterized it's characterized in a lot of places, but the one that jumps out is in Mundaka Upanishad, where Shaunaka goes to Angiras and says, Kasminu bhagavo vignate sarvamidam vignatam bhavati iti. Oh, sir, you please tell me that by knowing which I will know everything. Meaning what? It's a knowledge about something that encompasses all other knowledges because it's about infinite versus all the other knowledges, all good, all useful, all worthy of doing, but they are always finite. So therefore, if I want something that's going to last, something that really focuses in that direction, then I have to go for something which is infinite. And so this is the text, this is the intent of that Upanishad and all of the other Upanishads. And as I said earlier, it's something which a person has accomplished, has grown out of in the vein of Parikshalokan Karmachitan, Nirveda Mayat Brahmanaha, Nastya Akritaha Kritena, Tadvijnanartam, Sagurameva Bigatshet. So when a person recognizes that, what do? They cast about. And that's exactly what Shaunaka did. And so therefore, going for something more, as we say, more than what meets the eye. So the Upanishads deliver this, and their focus is solely on this oneness, which is infinite, which is inclusiveness. All of these things are saying the same thing, basically. And of course, the big question then is, okay, so they're all words. And if they're words, then how do those words, deliver the goods, so to speak? How do they make me see this? And therefore, we have, of course, all these 100 plus Upanishads that are around, with 10 of them being major, that they really dissect, analyze, create, and then have different contexts, different subject matters, but the overall message and intent of the teaching comes through the same, loud and clear. And you can, essentially, of course, what you can say about that is endless. But for our purposes now, just understand that a common word, which is found in all of them, in the focus, the goal, Brahman. So Brahman, you need to know Brahman. If I need to know Brahman, then what does that mean? And again, how does it connect? What does it do for me in terms of knowing this? So very simply, and this is just a short description, that when you look at the root of the word Brahman, Brahman means what? It comes from the root Br. In some contexts, it's defined as that which keeps on expanding and growing. In other contexts, it's defined as that which is the biggest, to be big. It means the root to be big, of which there is nothing bigger. So either way, it fits in the sense that when we look at if we're going infinite then must necessarily be more than what is finite. So if that's the case, then where is it? And what does it look like? What does Brahman look like? If what I want is Brahman, then, and I've never met Brahman. So where is Brahman to be found? And by looking at the definition of the word, we understand that Brahman is that which is, it's not an adjective, because big is typically an adjective to another word, like a house, a mountain, a car. Something which is describing and setting apart an object, telling that it's larger than other objects by saying big house, big car, big mountain. Each time it's adjectival. Here, it's the subject. So that means what? The subject, Brahman, as the subject, is the big of which then there is nothing bigger. Okay. So then, all right, well, I still don't see Brahman. I don't know what Brahman looks like. I don't know where Brahman is. So how does that relate to this? And how does it relate to the oneness? Because that's where we started. That's what we care about. So this is where, again, just simple analysis tells us that when you look at the biggest thing that we do know, what is the biggest thing that we know? We know space. All right. So space is pretty darn big. In fact, it's incomprehensibly, geologically vast. And all that we really know about space is that we can't comprehend it. So we know that we can't comprehend what it's incomprehensible. But at the same time, we're able to observe it because things exist within space. Entire universes exist within space. And but for space, there would be none of these. Nothing would be possible without space as that big object. So if that's big and we can comprehend that, Brahman, which is infinite, must necessarily then be bigger. So if it's bigger, then that tells you also that it is equally in and through space. So it is everywhere within the setup of space, because space is everywhere. So space is everywhere. What contains it is also everywhere, and it's beyond everywhere. So with that being so, that tells you then that there is nothing away from Brahman. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. That's from Chandogya earlier. And it's saying all of this is Brahman. And then further, it says Aham Brahma Asmi. That's in Brihadaranyaka. But these different texts in various ways continuously identify and say all that there is Brahman. I am Brahman. And if I'm not feeling like I'm Brahman, then it's not the fact that I'm not Brahman. It's the fact that I don't see myself that way. And that just means what I need. I need something to be adjusted up here. More than just an attitude adjustment, an understanding of how that's so. And in the process of knowing how that is so, I discover myself as non-separate, as one, in which I lack nothing, because if I am non-separate from Brahman, and Brahman is everywhere and in and through everything, how is it possible for me to lack? Because I'm non-separate. Like that wave in the ocean. You know, the wave in the ocean, actually both the wave and the ocean are what? Water. Where's the water? Everywhere. Where's the wave? Not out of the water. The wave is water. The ocean is water. All there is water. If that's the case, then the wave just has to shift its perception away from thinking I'm this small, pokey little wave, you know, getting knocked around in this vast ocean. I have no idea where I'm going to end up because there's a lot of bigger waves around. But from the standpoint of myself, I know that I am untouchable in the sense of being water. I am bigger than all of this. Nothing can affect me. And I am complete because water is all that there is in that context. And this is along these lines. When you know Brahman, you understand that Brahman is that which is including, inclusive of everything, beyond all of this, and yet complete and comprehensible when I shift the way in which I understand the nature of things. And in that context too, Sat Chit Ananda is one way of describing Brahman, besides saying it is that which is the biggest. So that means what? Sat, which is always there, ever present, not going anywhere, can't go anywhere because it's everywhere. So that is all that there is in an existent, and free from time because it's always there, not changing. And further, conscious, fully conscious, the essence of being conscious, consciousness, which is vibrant, which is, of course, intelligent. Because, you know, fundamentally, I know that I didn't create my intelligence, such as it is, and therefore it had to come from somewhere. And that intelligence that is all intelligence, that is all that there is Brahman. And finally, Ananda. Ananda means that which is complete, which is full, which lacks nothing. How can it lack if it is in and through everything and beyond it? So this is what is understood by the teaching of the Upanishads, what's contained in the Upanishads, Vedanta. So Advaita Vedanta is all inclusive, of which you can't get more inclusive than that. And when that is recognized, then it's simply a matter of shifting my mind to see that. Because in as much as it is not difficult to understand, we are habituated to thinking otherwise. So that's why all these Upanishads are there. That's why all these contexts are there, because our mind operates in endless ways, practically, seemingly endless ways. And therefore, these become a mechanism for really shifting the mind, because it doesn't get any better than that when you're focusing on who you are. And in that respect, the only reason, really speaking, that I can even sit here and speak, or that we have this capacity to do any of this, is because of Shankara. So Shankara, you all know, I don't have to go into all the details around Shankara, but, fundamentally, essentially, and again, but for Shankara, there would be no vision in this respect, because the whole tradition was becoming extinct, and he came along and brought this tradition back and really brought it home, so to speak. And he didn't start something new. He didn't say, even though we are saying Shankara's Advaita Vedanta, Shankara never would have said that because he's not trying to start something new, not aiming for a whole different spin, just basically saying, in the context of what we know, it is what it is. So it is what it is, and presenting it as it is. And in this sense, it's a good is what it is. So he presented what was there, took every word and explained it. It's something like we have, of course, Old English and Shakespearean English too. If you look at Shakespearean or Old English, you can read it, but how much do you really understand? It's like, I know these words, I know they're saying something, but I have no idea what they're saying, because I am not well-versed in Old English. If I become well-versed, it's a different story. But at the same time, it's there, and it has, again, Shakespearean English is incredible. There are so many amazing things that are said through those plays and so on. Spot on. But here, it's Shankara taking those cryptic texts, which are, concise, very concise, and unfolding them so that the average person can appreciate what is being said there. And because of the way in which they're unfolded, your mind expands. It's just so cool, because as you're looking at these verses and then you look at the commentary, it's, your mind, instead of being locked up in its normal, we all have tendencies to get locked up in our little worlds. You can see the expansion of your mind as it focuses, it wraps around what's being said in these texts. And in that way, Shankara was diligent by presenting in all of the various texts, first of all, the Prasannatraya texts, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Sutras, and then the Prakarana Granthas, and then, of course, a lot of little even chants and stotras, just everywhere. He was able and kept bringing this back, bringing it home, so to speak, so that everybody, no matter where their mind was at, would be able to then recognize and appreciate what was really being said there. Because in as much as, and this is the irony, if you will, the paradox, I suppose is a better word, that Brahman is everywhere. Brahman is everywhere, and I am Brahman, and yet I have no clue that I am Brahman, that everything is Brahman. It should be obvious, but it's not. Because it is something which it's more than what meets the eye. The mind has to be really tuned to shift and focus on it. And Shankara's whole, purpose was to bring that about over and over again. And again, looking at what he established in terms of the mutts and what the Shankaracharya mutts do, they are all intended, of course, to maintain this tradition and keep it going. Because as we all know, it's so easy to get distracted. It's so easy to get caught up in all the other stuff that's going on. And so when you have these places and you have this intent and the tradition intending upon keeping it going, I mean, it's awesome. And I'll say this much: there was a study done. Well, it wasn't really a study. It was in the early 1800s when the British went around collecting all the different texts and their recitations and everything. And then this is all documented. So that's what's really neat about it, is they brought it all together and found that the Upanishads, the text, everything was the same, no matter where they got it from in India. And it's like, whoa, that's the oral tradition. And that's also part of the same thing, in which it's all been carried down and maintained for so long. It's hard to imagine. No communication like we have today, but they maintained it. And it's the same all over. The tradition is the same, no matter what all the cultural differences are. It's just beyond comprehension. And, you're just in awe of the whole thing. But this is, again, where that focus, it's because of that focus. And Shankara was pivotal in having, sustaining and maintaining that. And we have, our teachers today who also brought it in English. Swami Chinmayananda, Swami Dayananda, all these and others who have also done the same thing. It's just to keep it going, to be able to make it work and applicable to us in where we are and what we are doing. And Shankara, again, and that famous saying, I will just quote the second half of it, which is Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivo Naiva Brahma Naiva Naparaha. Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. So all that there is Brahman, and everything else that you see, it's there, but not really. So it's like those, again, the waves in the ocean, you see them, but when you do the inquiry, not really there. And we see that in terms of our world. It appears to be there, but what you see is not really there. And therefore, what should be seen is what is always there, which is Brahman. And that Brahman is unfolded in Advaita Vedanta. And that, in turn, creates, again, inclusiveness. And that was the whole thing, looking at the way in which that inclusiveness has sustained and maintained, despite everything else that has happened within India. They have maintained it. They have kept it going because of that focus on the texts, which are all about being included, inclusiveness. And how does that impact us, day to day? Well, it's not it's not necessarily out there like so much else is out there, but it's always there. And it's an underlying ripple. It's something like, they say the ripple effect. You throw the stone in the water and there are ripples, and the ripples keep going. And so that's what I would say is here. The ripples keep going, and the ripples are impacting in a subtle way, and sometimes more pronounced. But at the same time, it's always there impacting. And in that respect, even if people are totally clueless about this and will never necessarily turn their attention this way, the impact of those who do, and or the fact that it's even there, is supportive of releasing, if you will, or easing stress, really easing all the other stuff that goes on. Because it's just that thing of, and you can try this at home, if you sit and stay focused in all the spin that's in the media, And then you shift and you listen to someone unfolding these texts or explaining. Your mind shifts, and in the process, all that stuff disappears, and you relax, because it's that wherever you place your identity, that's where you go. That's how you focus on that. Your identity is there. That's where you go. So when there's a realization of, okay, I go this way, it's, you could say in general terms, what is finite? If I'm in finite world and focused on especially all the spin, and the spin is just, it can get wild and crazy out there, but that spin just puts me in a spin. And so that's the impact. It's so simple. And in that shifting away, you focus on what is other than that. And it's, the impact is completely different and discernible. And so this is really what inclusiveness in Shankara'charys Advaita Vedanta, I would submit, is really all about. And in terms of being able to recognize and grab onto it, so to speak, take a hold of this, give it your attention, it goes a long, long way towards not only freeing yourself from all of those limitations and being stuck in that world, but it also just keeps moving you in a direction that it doesn't get any better than this. So that's, that is really the vision. And in that way, I don't think there's anything better. And I think it's, just something you just keep exploring and see for yourself how it works. Thank you.
Thank you, Janani ji. That was a wonderful explanation on how that oneness indeed is inclusiveness. And if we focus ourselves on that infinity, we can, not get lost in the spin of the world, so to speak. In very simple and elegant terms, you have really given the solution to all our problems. We have a few questions, and I'll take them. One of the question is, Mahesha Aswani is asking, it all sounds good that all is Brahman. The question is, what is the actual experience like? What does one achieve?
Okay, that's a good question. And the experience itself is, it's really goes in the recognition of seeing this. You see that that becomes, if you will, your experience. Seeing is, if you will, owning it. Owning it means then what? It means that you see the difference. So it's not just an intellectual grasp, but it's about yourself. You are who you see, and in the process of seeing yourself that way, then there is nothing else really that is required to be done or experienced. Because experience is something, you can have experiences, but they come and they go. And what we're talking about is something that lasts. And in that context, you're always there too. You don't go anywhere. So you don't go anywhere, you're always there. And the one who is always there is complete. And when you see that about yourself, and that, you are always included, you are at home, you are in what we call in this context, in the Western context, we call being all tucked in. You're all tucked in. You don't need anything else. That's all that there is. And it's just that shifting that makes all the difference. And then from that, when you go on living your life, you go on doing what you have to do, but you go on doing it with a difference. This is the thing of, this is what's demonstrated in the Bhagavad Gita, because Arjuna's really between a rock and a hard place. I mean, worst case scenario, and he's in this situation, and he doesn't change anything that he does. He changes how he looks at what he does, because actually he's the one that didn't want to do anything. He wanted to escape it. And Krishna said, no, this is, it's not about going off and escaping from it. It's about being there, facing it, but facing it with the right understanding. And when that shift occurs here, then whatever you do contributes to a oneness, bringing about oneness with reference to everything else. So I hope that answers the question. If not, please say so and speak about it further.
So Janani, looking at it differently is with the understanding that one is Brahman. Is that what is the change of perspective for common people like us? How do we understand that?
Well, because it's a loaded topic, it takes more than just a few short minutes to explain it. But what it does is it's something like, the best example I can give is like when somebody's in love. Okay, everybody knows that feeling of being in love. Okay, in that, what happens? It's temporary, of course, generally speaking, but when they are first sort of smitten by that, the world, everything is right with the world. Nothing needs to be different. Nothing else needs to be done. The world could end tomorrow and they'd be just fine. So a person who goes through that experience knows that at that time, there's nothing that they want more than what they have right now. This is an expression of fullness. So it's just a situation. But that mind that is full at that time is the mind that we're talking about now. When you recognize your oneness, when you recognize who you are, it's as profound, more profound actually, than being in love, because it's something that's fundamental, solid, and it's that which occurs when the mind wraps itself around that. You are, immediately with that, and you don't want anything to be different. You want the world to be as the world is. If you find that you have to do things to change, you might find you have to, your situation requires that you're an agent of change, for instance. But you can do that it's just attitude. It's seeing that it's another way of saying it real quick or asking the question, would you rather do things because you want, out of a want or a longing or a need, or would you rather live your life and do what you have to do out of a sense of fullness and well-being? And so that's a no-brainer. Of course, everybody wants to be full and complete. And when they see that they already are, there's that oneness, there's that inclusiveness. Then when they perform actions, when they do what they have to do, like Arjuna, they do it with a difference. So it's just changing how they look at it. And that's a cognitive change. And I hope that answers the question. It's a cognitive change, which will occur when you focus your mind on these teachings, on these texts. It will change. We used to think that we were missing something, and we were always concerned about, oh, we missed this, we missed that. And my teacher always used to say, don't worry, it'll get in there in spite of yourself. So it's just a question of being focused, looking at it, and it gets in there. You absorb it. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's a very clear answer for us. Hariharan has a question. Ma'am, is it not that Shankaracharya's thesis is based on neti? Then how to correlate with the topic that is inclusiveness? I mean, basically what he's saying is, how does inclusiveness correlate with neti, which is, he says, is the total opposite of what Shankara has actually taught?
Yeah. Neti is a method, is part of the methodology of teaching. In other words, if what I'm seeking is what is really there, then in order to see what is really there, I have to remove what is not there. So neti is a negation of what is not there to really reveal what is there. In fact, in the commentary, what they really say is neti means what? It's just removing ignorance that covers what is already present. So it is part and parcel, if you will, of uncovering or revealing oneness, because when you take away all the otherness, all the things that are part of the otherness, the not this, not this, not this, removing all of that, then oneness stands revealed. So that's it. They dovetail. The process, the methodology, the practice of removing, saying nati nati, not this, looking at everything and seeing what's not and what is, you know, it's a interactive thing that helps by seeing then what is. Ultimately, you end up seeing what is, because what is not goes away. You know, you're not going to keep focusing. When you dismiss something, this is another way of saying it. If you keep dismissing things, you're not going to keep focusing on what you dismissed. You know, it's like, why would I say not this, and then keep thinking about what is not this, what not this? We've already dismissed it. So when you dismiss it, what is there is one, and that is all that there is.
Okay, there's an anonymous question, and the question is, what role will Vedanta have in addressing the global issues of like interreligious fighting, violence, you know, and all those problems of modern life, so to speak? I mean, how can Vedanta address these issues?
Yeah, that's why I said it's typically Vedanta is not something that is sort of out there. It can be if there's a right person that is able to express and bring it that way. But Vedanta in and of itself is not typically something that becomes, what do you call, transactional in that respect. You know, it's better, and it's been my experience, that you start with you just present what is oneness, and you just keep doing that and doing that. And that is not as dramatic as being out there and sort of carrying a banner of ending all of this, because it's a transactional world is nothing but a series of contradictions in that, because as soon as you start carrying a banner of putting an end to all this, and we represent Vedanta, and Vedanta is going to put an end to all of this, you create another group. You've got the group of Vedanta, who's going to put an end to all the other groups, or the divisions in all the other groups. So there's, you know, it can be problematic. Not to say that it can't be done, but it requires a real understanding and dexterity in doing that. And, you know, all we can do is keep doing what we are doing, which is focusing, turning towards what is really there versus what's not. I'll say this much too. If you feed too much into all of the strife and the differences, it's like feeding the fire. The more you keep paying attention to it, that's what the media counts on, for instance. They keep feeding, and people keep, you know, and then they get upset because they're feeding on that. And this is the reaction. And it's not to say you shouldn't follow the media or whatever. It's just to put it in perspective, because this constant feeding and focus typically does not solve the problems. It only creates more division. And again, it takes a dexterous person to be able to, you know, tippy-toe and move through that to help bring things together. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. The other question, which I think several people are asking, is, you know, how does one make this cognitive shift? I mean, is it through learning, studying, any practices that one can follow in day-to-day life?
There's a lot you can do. You can take basic texts that talk about practices. For instance, okay, it's something like, if I want to study Vedanta, then I have to have a mind that's prepared. Like, even I can't go into, unless I'm a genius or a prodigy of some kind, I can't go into advanced mathematics without having basic fundamental knowledge of math, okay? So it takes a mental preparation. So that mental preparation then is, you can do all kinds of things related to getting your mind on board, getting your mind geared up. And they are advocated in Tattva Bodh, is a very good text. Upadesha Sadham, another good text that talks about gearing up and getting your mind oriented this way. And along with that, that expression of Shravana Manana Nididhyasana Tabhyaha. This Shravana Manana, and he did in Brihadaranyaka when he talks to Maitreyi, that's what he tells her. So it is this thing of you should do Shravana. Out of the gate, Shravana. So because it's the thing of I need to put my mind somewhere. If I don't put my mind on all that other stuff, then where do I put my mind? I got a lot of time, well, a fair amount of time. So where do I put my mind? And that's where you have to do listening. Listen and keep, because that's all shifting the mind. That's the cognitive thing. You keep putting your mind here as opposed to putting it elsewhere. And the more you put it here, the more it also likes it ultimately. Because it sees this is a good deal. If I focus on finite, I'm going to get finite. Cause and effect. Focus on finite, get finite. Focus on infinite, I get infinite. What's not to like about that? And then further, if I choose to focus on finite, I get to. But at the same time, I can't complain because it's never going to deliver infinite. So if what I really want is infinite, then I just have to find those texts, those teachers, anybody who's focused in this direction. That's also satsang, finding people of like minds. Like that's what they in Bhajagovindam, that satsangatve, nisangatvam, sangatve, nirmohatvam, nischalatatve, jivan muktihi. So you find people of like minds. Resonance. This is again grouping, but it's a grouping that's all about ultimate inclusion and doesn't get, you can't go any better than that for that. So, but all of these are the practices and things are there. And, if anybody has any questions further about that, I'd be happy to, talk about it offline or something, whatever. But I hope that addresses it.
And that's very clear to us. There's another question is, how do you reach Vedanta to children and youth?
That is, again, in whatever way that children are available to listen. Again, it's this thing of you let them know, and I've taught children, I've taught teenagers, and and of course, that whole culture is all geared towards opening children's minds and making them aware. So, and again, there are a number of texts that have been put together by various people relating to explaining Vedanta in this way. And so it's a question of just finding people who are teaching this or going for those texts that are there, and or just talking to other people who know, because again, in the culture, there are so many people that know so much, and finding ways to, and creating those groups, because in the Arshavidya Pitam, the ashram in Saylorsburg in Pennsylvania, they have summer camps, and the whole intent is to bring children together and give them the opportunity to be around other children who are being exposed in the same way. So that again creates that cohesiveness and that satsanga, if you will.
Thank you, Janani ji. This was a wonderful session on how to cultivate the value of inclusiveness, which is, of course, the understanding oneness. That's the main thing. And we are, of course, thankful to the Advaita Academy because they have given us this 1 month satsang, so at least we can all start from there. And thank you once again for supporting our program. We have more wonderful sessions coming. Tomorrow also there's a great session. We'll announce that.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Tomorrow morning at India time 7 a.m., we have Brahma Sutras Anandamayadikaranam, a critical study by Gauri Mahulika. So please do tune in on Zoom or any other social media website and attend this session. Namaste. Thank you.